Hey guys, welcome back to another video. And in today's video, I kind of just want to make this video showing my personal experience working at the Lego store. Now, I know that this isn't going to be every single Lego store. I know that not every Lego store is copy paste, but this video is more like just to give you a warning, give you some tips, give you anything for you for when it comes to choosing a job, your first time job. Just kind of make sure that you're choosing right and you're not jumping into it like I was, which was kind of a big mistake for me because it just, this job experience wasn't really all that good. It was somewhat great for the most part, but it was just this one thing that, kind of made me jump ship and realize like this ain't worth it. I'm not getting treated like this. But yeah, you know what? Let's just jump into it. So, first week working at the Lego store was actually pretty great, I would say. The manager was out of town, he was on a break, and so the assistant manager was the one taking over for that week, and everything was great. Like I said, the assistant manager was just really helpful. Like whenever I had a question, he would always be there to help me, and the coworkers were actually pretty great as well. Well, that week is over. Pretty amazing week. Let's see what next week has in store. The manager comes back from his vacation, and first things first, first day I remember when he came back, I had my apron on a little wrong, and so he kind of gets a little, I guess I would say, handsy, and he tries to fix the apron for me, and it kind of felt a little bit embarrassing, like when your mom notices something wrong right as you get to school, and so she tries to fix it for you, but your friends are standing right there. That's kind of what it felt like. And so he tried fixing it for me, but I thought it was no big deal. It was a little embarrassing, but I thought it was no big deal. Well, a few days later, a coworker also had his apron on wrong, and he had also recently started. But rather than going over and fixing his apron, the manager just kind of went like, "Hey, your apron's wrong. Please fix it." And that was that for him. And I thought that was a little it was a little unfair, to be honest. But to be honest, I could deal with a little unfairness. It's fine. I thought that maybe he was just like, he didn't have time to fix his apron or whatever. And I was willing to excuse that. That doesn't, not having time to fix someone's apron doesn't necessarily make this guy a bad manager. But what happens next, I personally feel like does. So I had this really important thing coming up in a few months after I started working, and it was super important to me, right? Obviously, this was like really important, and so I had talked to the assistant manager, asked him that I was gonna need about a week off, and the assistant manager was super cool with it, and he said, "You know what? It's fine. I'm sure you're gonna get that week off. I'll make sure to talk to the manager. You also make sure to talk to the manager, so that way you can get your week off." So I talked to the manager, and he gives me that week off as well. He's like, "You know what? It's fine. I'll give you that week off. That's yeah, that's okay." And I kind of had to tell them like, "Hey, by the way, that week it's gonna kind of be unpredictable. I know it's gonna be on this month, but it's gonna kind of be unpredictable. I don't know what week exactly I'm gonna need it off, but just be aware that I am gonna need that week off." And they seemed cool with it. They seemed fine. They agreed. They said, "Yeah, hey, you know what? That does actually make sense. We'll make sure to keep that in mind." So the time comes for me to take that week off, and I call in. I say, "Hey, it's happening," and they're like, "All right, then fine, cool. Like enjoy, what's happening to you right now." And I'm like, "Okay, that's that." I already warned them that I was gonna need a week, so hopefully they know that I was gonna need a week. Well, about 2 days into that week off, my manager calls and says, "Hey, you haven't been calling out for these past few days, and I'm gonna really need you to come in today." So I had to drop my very important moment just to come in because the manager couldn't remember that I had asked for a week off. And I know that I probably should have quit on the spot since it was kind of a dick move that he would do that to me. But I felt like at the moment I really needed that job. And so I come in, I drop my very important moment just to come into work. And like I said, to be honest, I kind of wish I had just quit on the spot. I kind of wish I just had told him off. Maybe not told him off at the beginning, but if he had kept on persisting that I hadn't called in, that I would have just quit on the spot. But unfortunately, I didn't. And so I come in to work that day. The next day, I call out. The next day, I call out. The next day, I call out. And then I go into work on a Sunday because, I kind of had that day free from that moment. And so I come in, but then on Monday, I didn't really get that much sleep. They had told me that, hey, you know what? If, because of this moment, you don't get sleep, it's fine to call out. So I had to call out. But unfortunately, the manager answered. And unfortunately, the manager seemed pissed. And he said, like, "Hey, you know what? I can't have you doing that. So I'm going to give you a week off." And at first I thought that he was doing me a favor, like a solid or something. I'm like, yes, finally he's listening to my, my request that I needed a week off. But I did find out that a month or two after that, that wasn't actually like a favor, like a solid that he was doing for me. It turns out that that was like a suspension, basically. It was like getting suspended from school. And the reason I found out about this was because my friend had contracted COVID, and I'm sure he was feeling sick. And so, because he hadn't shown up for a few days, my manager also gave him a week off. And I had overheard a couple coworkers talking about this. And apparently they said, like, oh, yeah, this guy, he hadn't come in for a while. So, they suspended him. They gave him a week off, and it didn't really sound like a good thing. And I'm like, well, that's a bitch. My manager can't understand when somebody had requested a time off, and my manager can't understand when somebody's feeling sick and not good, so he just suspends them. I really thought that that was super uncool of the manager, and that's personally for me, that's what cemented him being a bad manager in my eyes. I feel like he was unfit to lead any sort of team, to be honest. And I probably should have guessed that my manager was horrible based on my interview. So my interview was actually a group interview, and like when he was talking, he seemed super energetic, super pumped. He seemed like he was happy that all of us were there. But then when we started talking, he didn't really seem all that interested. He seemed like he literally wanted to be anywhere else. But I had assumed that maybe that's just how his face looked. That's just how he was. I'm sure maybe he didn't feel like that. However, when I started working, the week that he came back, I was grabbing a Lego set off the shelf to restock, and I had overheard him talking to somebody, because one of the floor managers had quit, so he had to hire a floor manager. And again, I had overheard him talking to somebody, and he was saying, yeah, man, all these people that I'm interviewing, they all sound like robots, it sucks interviewing. I'm not entirely sure exactly what he said, because this was almost a year ago. From what I remember, and from what I could tell, he did not like interviewing people. He did not like talking to people. He really seemed unhappy that he was doing that, which I feel like is a bad quality for a manager. So yeah, it sucks that the manager was actually a very poor, horrible manager. And I would personally say, Lego, if you ever watch this, hire the assistant manager of that sort, to be honest, to be the actual manager. The assistant manager was everything that a manager should be. He was kind, he was helpful. I'm sure he's had bad days working there, or he's had bad days at home, but it never really reflected in his work. He was always positive, and he always tried to keep everything good with people, not only with the customers, but also with the employees. He's always tried to keep just a positive attitude. And so, yeah, that store's assistant manager should have been the manager. And it sucks that Lego hired a really shitty manager instead. But yeah, just I guess my tip to you guys is if this is your first time working, just really, really evaluate how the manager is. If you notice anything sketchy about the manager during the interview, it probably is something, and it's probably most likely not going to go away once you start working. So really just, try and evaluate your manager before you start working. Don't just be like, oh, well, I need this job. It's like, no, you deserve better. You deserve respect. If it seems like the manager isn't showing you respect during the interview, don't go to that job. There are literally millions of other jobs that are hiring. You should probably get one with a good manager. There's bound to be a few good managers that are actually respectful to you. But yeah, that's about it. See ya.